Hello everyone. I think that probably took Sue by some surprise that I'm down here and not up there, but I don't like stages. So I'm going to thank the wonderful Shaggy up there. He's going to keep me on track too with my presentation down there. So actually, Shaggy, what I did forget to pick up was the clicker on stage. He did that deliberately. Sue, is the clicker up there? Can you find that for me? Yep. There's a clicker here. Thank you. While I'm waiting for that, Corinne yesterday, or the day before, thank you, took the opportunity to take some video. So I know I'm running, the session is running late. I've been given permission to go 5 minutes over. And if you want to argue with Anna Heather, you go right ahead. But I am going to take this opportunity just to make a few acknowledgements. The first thing I want to acknowledge is the traditional owners of this land, past, present and future, and I make the solemn promise that I'll always walk softly on this land. The second acknowledgement I'd like is to thank the LIANZA Council and LIANZA for bringing me over from your West Island to do this presentation. It's one of my favourite things to come to this country. And which leads me to my next thank you, and that's to all of the people of New Zealand for the last 14 years making me feel very welcome in your country. And it's the reason I keep coming back, and with your permission, we'll keep coming back. The last acknowledgement I wish to make is, in April this year, my partner and I returned to Christchurch for the first time since the earthquake. And we were at the same time heartbroken and uplifted by the spirit and the resilience of the Christchurch people. So I would like to acknowledge those people for being the model that they are for all of us, I think, in adversity. So that's my acknowledgements out of the way. Thank you very much for inviting me here, and we should kick off. I've been watching you all take notes during the sessions. You can take notes now. I'll give you permission to write 2 words: disrupt and pivot. Then you can put your pens down. No need to do anything else, because you can go home, and when you have to report back to your institutions, well, what was she banging on about at that conference? You can say, well, it was disrupt and pivot. That's all she said. Because that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of an exploration of the term disrupt in all of its versions, and then we're going to have a look at the word pivot. So let's look at this to start with. This gentleman here, he's a hero. He should be all our heroes. Does anybody recognise him? Yes? No. No, he's better than Steve. This man has changed the world as we know it. Good try, but no. I'd like to introduce you to Olivier Leroux. Now I've hit the funny bone, haven't I? Caramelier and chocolatier. He was responsible for this. Does anybody know what that is? Oh, almost. This has changed even magnums, I noticed. This is a salted caramel. I know, you're saying, what has a salted caramel got to do with anything? If I forget where I put my iPad, can somebody remind me it's on this front seat? Excellent. This man took a humble caramel and he disrupted it. He added salt. He added salt to something that we have been eating for hundreds of years. And in doing that, he created a whole new generation of caramel. It's in everything. It's in Zuzu's over the road here at the gelati place. It's in the magnums that we can buy at the moment. Special edition, I might add, I've noticed. It's even in Tim Tams. Who would have thought, just by adding a little bit of salt to something that we all just were very familiar with, he would have completely reconstructed confectionery as we know it. I want to introduce you to these unlikely looking lads. I don't think you'll know who these are, so I'm going to tell you. These are the Uber boys. Travis and Garrett. if anybody doesn't know Uber, and I'm not sure if Uber has hit New Zealand yet, has it? No? Well, Uber, these boys, are transforming what we know as the pay or fee-for-service public transportation, commonly known as taxis. Uber, when it hits New Zealand, and it will disrupt. It will disrupt everything we know about taxis, everything you know about paid transportation. These guys are crowdsourcing social media, crowdsourcing fee rides in people's private cars. They're doing it all over the world. They're using social media to do it. And as you can see, they're applying some of the badging and crowdsourced ratings that we're all familiar with on Facebook and all those other social media things. So we can actually know who's coming to pick us up, where they are, how good everybody thought they were, and we can even give them a call just by pressing a number. They are seriously disrupting. We've had people in different countries up in arms in the streets about this disruption. And this is the man who I'd like to think coined the term. This is Clayton Christensen. In 1995, he coined the term disruptive technology, but not long after that, he realised that it wasn't technology so much as innovation that he was interested in, the notion of disruptive innovation. And this is how he described that particular journey, that he realised that few technologies are disruptive on their own, that it's only when you get them into the hands of a well-constructed business model that they actually have a disruptive impact. It's a little bit like the salted caramel. Salt is useless, well, good for some things, but until you put it with caramel and you sell it and you trademark it, which is what he's done, so I don't think you can start making salted caramel and go and sell it. You've got a disruptive innovation. But the thing about disruptive innovation is that it has to go after a new set of customers to really define as a disruptive innovation. So what you're looking for is a new market. A new market not being served by the incumbents in the industry at the time. And I promise you this will all make sense at the end, so don't zone out right now. So disruptive innovation means that you have to go after new markets and you have to find a whole new population of customers to serve. And Shaggy, if you wouldn't mind rolling, we're going to listen to Clayton Christensen describe that just for 2 minutes.
My guest today is Professor Clayton Christensen. Clay, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Des.
What exactly is disruptive innovation? Explain it.
A disruptive innovation is not a breakthrough innovation that makes good products a lot better. But it has a very specific definition, and that is it transforms a product that historically was so expensive and complicated that only a few people with a lot of money and a lot of skill had access to it. A disruptive innovation makes it so much more affordable and accessible that a much larger population have access to it.
So give us an example of this. I mean, most people are familiar with the computer industry and how that's developed. Perhaps you can use that as an example. Yeah,
so at the beginning, the first manifestation of digital technology was a mainframe computer. It cost several $1 million to buy, and it took years to be trained to operate these things. And so that meant that the largest corporations and the largest universities could have one, you know. And so we had to take our problem to the center where the experts solved it for us. But then there's a sequence of innovations from the mainframe to a mini, to a desktop, to a laptop, and now to a smartphone that has democratized technology to the point that everybody has access to it around the world. And we are much better off. It was very hard, though, for the pioneers of the industry to catch these new waves. Most of those were created and dominated by new companies.
And then you're touching on that gives rise to, this process gives rise to The Innovator's Dilemma, which was the title of your 1997 book.
Yeah, that's right.
But how do people get around that? I mean, that dilemma, can you explain the dilemma itself to us?
Yeah, so the dilemma is...
So I want you to keep that in mind, the sequencing of innovation, because I'm not going to be talking about the sequencing of innovation in terms of technology. I'm going to be talking about the sequencing of innovation in terms of learning, is where we're going with this. So you say, all right, well, I thought I was at a at a library conference, and it turns out I'm at a business conference, and I've completely come to the wrong building. You haven't, because this does apply to libraries. And it particularly applies to libraries in higher education. So I want you to keep that word disrupt in the back of your mind while we move to the next thing. And the next thing is that it turns out libraries are really good at disrupting. We are masters at disruption. I know everybody thinks we just sit in the back corner, we're quiet and, you know, self-effacing. But we are scary. We are scary disruptors. Look what we've done with information. We've taken that humble word, information, and we've dominated it. We've disrupted how information is accessed by people, and we have driven the way it needs to be accessed by people. We've disrupted the distribution models for information. We've challenged, I hope there's nobody in the room, the publishing environment to say that it has to be distributed in certain ways. We've also challenged the creation model for information. We've been disruptive in that space as well, in terms of how information can be created and managed and then looked after. And of all things, in all of that, despite all of the attacks from the side, we have stood firm against the challenges to the sanctity of information and that information being accessible to everyone. As a profession, we have rallied around that. And this is where the second word comes in that I want you to think about, and that's pivot. Because there's something else that this profession is really, really, really good at, and that's pivoting. How many of you are sailors? Come on, you live in Auckland. Most of you, some of you, lots of you live in Auckland. You're familiar with the term tacking. You're changing direction. Well, when I say pivot, that's what I'm talking about. We're tacking. Thank you. And I'm not a sailor, but I did buy a kayak just recently. What we have done around information, and more important, around the learning around information, we have created a monumental pivot. Not that long ago, there were rumblings in Scandinavia around information literacy, and those rumblings generated vibrations right across this world, so that in the end, we were all doing something much more important than bibliographic instruction, much more important than user education, much more defining. We started to work in the world of information literacy. At that point in time, this profession took a huge pivot away from what everybody expected of us, and we said, that's not good enough. We have to leave that path, and we have to go that way. And it made us all really uncomfortable. People were really challenged, really uncomfortable with that. That disruption in what we believed of ourselves really unsettled people. Because we didn't just talk about information literacy. Heaven forbid, we started talking about learning. And in higher education, even worse, we started talking about teaching. And so we started to say, okay, you want our students to be graduates, they need to have these skills and these capabilities embedded into the curriculum. I don't know about your place, my place, that disrupted monumentally as well. People didn't like it. But we had to tell them why. We had to explain information literacy. Why is it important? What is it there for the students? What are the benefits to this institution for information literacy? And how can we, as a profession, enrich the learning for students if we engage in information literacy more broadly? So we disrupted the educational beliefs and practices of the universities that we were housed in. We disrupted their thinking. And in doing that, we had another successful disruption. We disrupted ourselves. We went from, and if I might say it, being complacent and comfortable, we went into a new realm of our professional practice where we actually believe differently of ourselves. And in making ourselves believe differently of ourselves, we made other people believe differently of ourselves. So to do that, these are the things we had to do. We had to redesign our services, we had to recreate our libraries, our organisations, we had to reform in different ways in professional groups in our universities. We had to reinvent ourselves, and we had to set a new determination for ourselves. Basically, we said, I'm not going to stand this anymore, we're going to do this. And people bought into it. Slowly, but surely, people have bought into it. But, I can use those two words again, comfortable and complacent. There's one thing somebody told me once about the word disrupt. When you engage in disruption, you, by the very nature of that, make yourself unpopular. So I'm fully expecting that what I'm going to do today is I'm going to follow up on what Mei Chen said. I'm going to try today to make you see yourself with different eyes. I'm going to follow on from what Ingrid said, and that's about just making sure. Sorry, Ingrid, I've forgotten what you said. Isn't that terrible? But it was important. It was so important, I wrote it down. Ingrid said, with apologies, Ingrid, that my job here today is to change your thinking. And I'm going to add one more thing. My job here is to make you shift uncomfortably in your seat. And that's possibly going to make me unpopular, and you won't talk to me at morning tea, and you won't come up and talk to me tonight at the dinner, and that's fine because I've got friends who will. But I can feel something in my profession, and I don't like it. What I can feel in my profession is that kind of comfortable, almost smug complacency that I felt years ago around user education. And I'm telling you now, now's the time to pivot. We've been going in that direction for long enough, and people are starting to miss us on the horizon. We're going grey into the background. I don't know about you, but we're better than that. So we need to start disrupting big time, or people are going to start to wonder, what's the point of you? And quite frankly, you're going to wonder, what's the point of me? And you're going to think, it's time for me to go fishing because I've got nothing else here to offer. So it's time now to pivot. And there's a reason for it. We're about to enter another challenging period of our professional career. And I'm sure you're doing it here, we're doing it in Australia, and it's unsettling. We're entering a vortex of things that we can't really control, but they're having a significant impact on what we're doing in our universities and how we're doing it. And the first one is industry accountability. I was recently assisting with a group of liaison librarians, our Faculty of Education. They were doing a course re-accreditation. They had to accredit or re-accredit with 8 different industry bodies. And then they had to accredit with the government, the federal government's Australian qualifications standards. So they had 9 different accreditations that they had to go through to get the Faculty of Education to be able to deliver an education course. And then there's the client accountability. We love them to death, those little fellows that come in and go, it's all about me. But they are our business, and they're the soul of why we are there. And we owe them. And actually, in terms of what our government is doing in Australia, we're going to owe them a lot more shortly. And also then, all of that rolls down, doesn't it? And it sits weighty on our shoulders, and it becomes all about the organisation's need to account for the business of the organisation. And they start to do things like add up the numbers, add up the dollars, work out return on investment. All those nasty things that we don't like thinking about because we're librarians are going to come home to roost. They are coming home to roost. In my country, or your West Island, as I said before, we're looking at deregulation. Our government is looking to deregulate our universities, which means students are going to pay a bucket load more for their education. If that goes through our Senate, those students are going to be in debt for the rest of their lives. That's going to increase competition around our universities, so students are going to become very discerning about which university they're going to go to and why, because the money is going to dry up from the government as well. There's going to be no government funding. But there's going to be more students demanding more, and they're going to be coming from a wider catchment with higher needs. And finally, we're going to, well, not finally, but as well, we're going to look at the greater corporatisation of our organisations in terms of, and for myself, I'm a service manager in my library. I'm a service manager for 5 services and 3 different learning resources. We have a service management framework. We talk about service in a whole new way to the way I used to talk about it 10 years ago. We talk about return on investment, and we are seriously always investigating product differentiation between our services and like services in our organisation so that we can prove we are different to those services, but we are complementary. And the whole ubiquitous education, my learning, my time, my place, when I like it, at my cost. Those are threats. Oh, where did we go with that one? Shaggy? Where have we gone? Okay, I'm going to have to go up on stage after all. I'm going to have to drive from the back, Shaggy. We've lost a step. Bear with me, folks. Just talk amongst yourselves. Where's my mouse? Oh, you've got the wrong one. It's not the right one. Can you find me the other one? Or have I got a mouse here?
No, it's on this one.
How does this happen, I ask? Here we go. Right, where'd it go? That's not it. Get me live, Shaggy, if you would. On
Your mic live? This one's the
Yep.
mic. So your other one's the mic.
All right. There's a way around this. Shaggy, take me to the next one, please, if you would. And I'll speak to it off my iPad. Right, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that, folks. I was in here at 8 o'clock this morning. Shaggy and I had it all going nice and neat. Who knows what happens in the world of technology, but that's why you never trust it. Give me 2 seconds to find where I am. Okay, with apologies, I'm going to have to speak to this from my iPad, so you're not going to have any visuals for a while, but that's all right, because that means you can just look at me. And I so love that. All right, back one, please, Shaggy. Thank you. So all those things that I've just mentioned, picking up where I left off, are not just threats. They're opportunities. They're opportunities for us because what they bring up for us are words around standards, quality assurance, performance and evidence, strategic alignment, and curriculum and policy. Those are opportunities for us. If we can maximise those opportunities, then what we can actually do is renegotiate our role, re-articulate our value, and re-communicate that value. It gives us that opportunity to do that. It also means that we can redesign our purpose in our institutions. To do that gives us the opportunity to re-engineer that purpose. And you're thinking, well, what might our purpose be? But there's another opportunity there, and it comes to the word collaboration. It gives us an opportunity to renegotiate our purpose in the organisation. So those things we can say to our universities, we will help you, help us, help the students. And in doing that, we will help you, help the students, help us as an organisation. To do that, we have to make a solemn vow. We have to say to our universities, we promise that we will value add the services of this organisation, we will value add the resources, we'll value add with our expertise, and we will value add the student outcomes from that process. I'll make this presentation available, the right presentation available to everybody afterwards, so you can go back and have a look at it. To do all of those things then, we have to leverage. And what we have to leverage is firstly a long established trust in us as a profession. We have to leverage the incredible talent within our profession to be able to pivot and disrupt. We have to leverage our versatility as a profession and as individual librarians. And more than anything, we have to leverage off our brand. Our brand is library, and it's a known brand and it's a trusted brand. And whenever we've tried to change it, we've fallen foul. So don't lose the brand. Then what we have to do is we have to deliver broader targeted learning services to a wider market for longer hours with the same level of professionalism. And in doing that, we become a pivotal provider of support for learning. Not just information literacy, but support for learning. We become partners and critical decision makers in support for learning, and in doing so, we can become essential drivers in support for learning. And the benefit for us is that we create a new profession. We create a new profession for the next set of professionals coming through to be able to create a new type of professionalism for this, who we are. And we give them a professional prospect which they didn't have before. All right, Shaggy, thank you. Back to the next one, please. There we go. Woohoo. So, what to disrupt? I've got a few minutes. Thank you. So, before I do that, I'm actually going to take you on my journey. Because you're starting to wonder, well, I remember disrupt, but she lost me and that whole gap in the middle. Completely lost my train of thought and I was thinking about morning tea. My journey. When I started in 1992 at QUT, yes, I've been there for an age, it really is time to retire. A lot of people are saying that. No, they're not. Are they? Are they? Are they talking about me? It's what to disrupt. Actually, I'm going to keep going before I get to my journey. It's disrupted me as well. This is what we have to disrupt. We have to disrupt what people hear. When we talk about ourselves and we talk about our profession, we have to disrupt what they hear us say. We have to disrupt what they believe in us and what they believe in us as a profession. We have to disrupt what they experience of us as libraries in their organisations and as librarians in their midst. And we have to disrupt what they do. So we have to challenge the academics in our organisations. We have to challenge the senior administrators in our organisation and disrupt what they do. Because if they keep doing the same old thing, we're not going to be able to make any changes. So what we have to ultimately do is change their perception of our role and our responsibilities and capabilities and our value to their business. But in doing that, we've actually got to look at ourselves and be self-reflective practitioners. We've got to disrupt what we say. Because if we don't change what we say, they will hear the same thing. So we have to say different things and say them in different ways. We have to disrupt what we believe in ourselves and what we're capable of as a profession in the teaching and learning space. We have to disrupt what we deliver, because doing the same old is just going to get us nowhere. If we keep going on that tack over there, we're going to end up in the same place we ended up, and we'll be talking about reader education all over again. And we have to disrupt how we engage with them. It's not cap in hand. It's all about being bolshy, walking into their offices, demanding that things happen, giving them good cause for those things to change the way. But sitting back waiting for them to come to us is going to get us absolutely nowhere. We have to change our roles, change our responsibilities, change our capabilities, and change our value to the business of learning. That's going to make us unpopular, but I don't care, because it's going to make us valuable. So, to come back to Clayton, to borrow some of his words now to apply it to our environment, we have to change our business model to create disruptive educational impact. Because that's the business we're going to be in. We have to build in disruptive innovation into our design, into our services and into our products. We have to go after a new set of learners. Those new set of learners, yeah, they're going to come in. They are kind of a captive audience, but they are not going to engage with us just because they're in the organisation. We have to go after them. And the new market disruption that Clayton talked about, that's because we have to, in our context, develop educational services that fit new and emerging learners who will not be adequately served in our institutions in the future. The students of critical need, the students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, the students who are first in family, they will not be adequately served in our institutions because libraries have scale. We have scale and we have reach. So we have to give a new majority of learners access to services that have only been available to a minority. And you're thinking, well, what services? We deliver services. And I'm saying that your new market is not information literacy. Your new market is much broader. Your new market is about being a player in the area of literacy for scholarship. It's your job and our job to help our learners become scholars. And we can't do that if all we're showing them is how to use a database. That's one piece of a very small puzzle. We have to take responsibility for helping them understand the whole academic endeavour, which means organising, reading, writing, time management, exam preparation, study skills, academic skills, information skills, communication, critical thinking, the whole shebang. What I like to think, or I like to refer to, because I'm a bit of a foodie, this is like nose to tail education. So, very quickly, where have I come from? When I first started at QUT back in '92, I was a liaison librarian for a number of years, and then I became information literacy coordinator. And at that time I had a university librarian who understood, inherently understood, that going in that direction was going to get us absolutely nowhere. The wonderful Gaynor Austin looked over the horizon and thought, there's something coming from Scandinavia, and it's not herrings, but it's good. I don't know what it's about, I don't understand it, and she thankfully gave me the job of deciding what we were going to do with it. So we pivoted at that point. We went away from user education, we pivoted towards information literacy, and I'll never forget the day I walked into it was a session for academics on assessment and assessment design, and I remember sitting down beside a couple of academics, and they said, oh, what faculty are you from? And I said, I'm not from a faculty, I'm from the library. And they looked at me square in the eye and said, what are you doing here? Well, yeah, I didn't swear. That doesn't happen anymore. My liaison librarians, they walk into an academic session and people just assume they're going to be there. When they're not there, the question is, why weren't you there? That's a pivot. We started talking about curriculum and assessment design and learning design and a whole bunch of things that people didn't expect us to talk about. And in doing that, we managed to talk ourselves into doing things that we didn't think we could do. We poured a lot of money into educating our library staff, and we gave them the words and the terminology they needed to engage in that space so that they didn't look like duffers when they walked in, and they were talking about criteria and criterion referenced assessment. We gave them the tools to actually manage. Then we developed, like a lot of other people in New Zealand and Australia, the standards came to roost, the information literacy standards. That gave us gravitas, gave us words to use, models to apply, and in our university, it became the university-wide framework for information literacy, and people started knocking on our doors. That was our way in, and it hasn't stopped then. What we became then were partners in teaching and learning, and people started inviting us. And in fact, I love to say it, people started begging. And there's nothing more satisfying. I hope there's nobody in the room that's an executive dean. Nothing more satisfying than having an executive dean drive for an hour and a half up a cold mountain to go to our divisional executive retreat to beg us to help them develop a new science course. Because that's what he did. So we got invited to change the science curriculum, and in fact our academic skills advisors and liaison librarians were helping the academics write the assessment, plan the learning activities. We were teaching them how to run their classes. And then he came back and we did it with maths, IT course, the maths course, the engineering course. And we also done it with education. That's a pivot. And the final pivot, which bears quite some explanation, but I'm not going to because I don't have time, and that's through a series of opportunities, we ended up getting the academic skills services in the university. We went from 1 person to 11. Those people are core members of our liaison teams. They work with liaison librarians and faculty staff to develop curriculum in those spaces. But we didn't just invite them in, we changed what we were as a library. It wasn't enough to say, well, you have to fit in with us. We unpacked our services, we unpacked our resources, we unpacked our strategic plans, and we repacked them to say this is no longer a plug-in business, this is part of our core. So it's just become the way we do things. So our liaison librarians, our peer student advisors, buggerlugs like me, stand on the desk for a couple of hours a week, and we help students write paragraphs. We help students plan their assignments. Then we have a next tier of support, our liaison librarians. They offer, with our academic skills advisors, one-on-one consultations with students where they spend 25 minutes helping them unpack any problem they have with their assessment, from editing and proofreading through to writing or paraphrasing or whatever it is they have to do. And then we have a top tier of specialist support of academic skills advisors who work with at-risk, high-need, high-touch students. We deliver it across the board. But we said to our liaison librarians, it's not good enough that you just know the business of a library anymore. You have to understand teaching and learning, and you have to understand that. Because we want to provide nose-to-tail services. And we don't want to be bumping students around like ping-pong balls from one part to another, because we don't do that. We'll do that, but not that. That's not good enough. So our students can come to our library and receive services across the board. And I've just recently been going around talking to a lot of academic staff around academic integrity. I've been asking them what they know about academic integrity resources in the university and what services they know they can refer students to. And you know what they say? The only things they can think of. QUT SiteRight, which is our referencing and citing guide. They don't know it's library. Who cares? They just picked our fundamental resource. Study Well, our learning resource for academic skills. They name it. Library workshops. They say it back to me. They don't even know I'm from the library, so they're not trying to blow smoke. We have brand recognition, which we have fought tooth and nail for, because we've started to use the language of the organisation back to them, and it's digging in. And anybody who's worked in a large organisation knows it takes a long time to change the culture of the organisation, a long time to bleed the memory out of stuff that's been entrenched in their memory. So once they start to get it, that's when we need to leverage. So we have to look at, as an organisation and also as a profession, we have to look at the academic capabilities for students and make sure that we can provide affordable, accessible support for those students that fundamentally changes their study and learning outcomes, that enables them to be powerful in their academic scholarship and their academic endeavour, and that also helps them in their career and life expectations. It's all the things we said of information literacy. We wanted to make them fully functioning citizens of the world. And this is part of making them a fully functioning citizen of the world. And it's, if we don't do it, who will? So, for libraries, academic learning services, they're a serious disruption because there are other people in your organisations that do it. They don't want to give it up, but I can tell you they're their own worst enemy. And in terms of collaboration and cooperation and partnerships, because mostly they have problems with that, they're going to be the end of their own professions. They're going to see their own demise. But if we can help them with complementary partnerships, complementary services, we become mutually important in the organisation. We give the libraries a future-facing mission, we make ourselves viable and relevant, and we change our professional gravitas. We actually develop in a different direction. We take a different professional pivot. I'm not going to let Clayton talk. If you want to see what Clayton says there at the end, just go in, but he basically just talks about what it means, and we might just skip that, I think. So what I'm asking you to do is, as I said in my original title, is this is about discovery, but this is about rediscovery. It's rediscovery of what you have done all these years with information literacy and helping people learn and understand. All I'm asking is that you help people learn and understand more about being capable. Not just with information, but everything that they do with that information in terms of writing and reading and managing it and understanding it. Rediscover your engagement in the universities that you work in, or in fact in your schools. This is no different in the school context. All of this applies to schools. I meet on occasion with school librarians and they say, yeah, I get that. I get that because that's happening here too. Rediscover the value that you have and rediscover your influence. Don't go grey into the background. Don't let them make you go grey into the background. Be bolshy and disrupt what's going on. And be prepared to have people not like you, because that's what it's going to take. Because we have a whole potential as a profession. We have a whole potential to change people's lives. I give this presentation, not this presentation, but I give a presentation to our frontline services staff every year. And I quote to them, the attrition rate, it's 15% in our university. That's around 2,675 students. That's not good enough. That's 2,675 lives that could have been different. That's aspirations that weren't met. You know, that's life challenges that have been disrupted. But we all get one chance at that desk to look somebody square in the eye and say, I can make a difference for you. Because we've got 45,000 students at our university. It's really easy to get missed, really easy to get lost. But if they walk into our library and they walk up to somebody on that desk, I say to our staff, you will see them. And they'll see you. So make that one chance count, because if you don't make that one chance count and that person was in need or they were struggling and you said, I'm sorry, I hear stuff about writing, but I can't help you with that. Go somewhere else. I can tell you they will not go somewhere else. So you're it. You're the flypaper. Make it stick, make it work. To do that, you have to pivot, disrupt what you do, disrupt what you believe. Just discover your power to disrupt everything. Excuse me.
So, Judith, I think that's stunning that you managed to finish on time. I'm not sure that we have any time for questions, but we are, okay. The boss says we do, so that's fantastic.
Judith, I'm another Judith, so...
It's a great name.
It is, we're all great. I just want to thank you for, I think today, I'm a prison librarian, okay, from Christchurch, so thank you for your kind words about Christchurch people, because we do need that still. And as a prison librarian, and most of the prison librarians in New Zealand, and there aren't many of us, are in this room today, speaking of as one of them, I think you've made us pivot today, and I'm not quite sure where we go from here, but the corrections department is not going to know what hit them.
Yeah. Nothing I like more than disrupting people in uniform.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Judith.
Where are we?
Oh, yes, hello. I'm another Judy.
Yep. Oh my God.
And
it's a rule.
Yes. And I'm just interested to hear about pivoting in research. You did talk about teaching and learning.
Yes.
And can you give us an example, or give me an example of pivoting in research, being in that area where we got, because we librarians do a lot of research as well, in writing and publishing. and also with best evidence and best practice.
Oh, so you mean pivoting in terms of librarians conducting their own research?
No, in the
and research
academics,
support
yes,
of
to
academics?
support students with the academics.
I'd love to be able to answer that question, but I'd be standing up here and making it up as I go along, because really the research support side of my organisation, I understand what's going on there, but I don't engage with it terribly much. Teaching and learning is my focus. So I'd like to be able to respond well. The only thing I can say around research support is a major pivot that we did in terms of teaching and learning for research support is that we now have a university-wide accepted mandatory credit point advanced research skills unit, which is fully compliant with the Australian qualifications framework, and every PhD student is required to do that or they won't graduate. So for us, that was a major pivot because it was kind of up in the air. People did it or they didn't. If they didn't feel like doing it, they didn't have to do it. Now the university actually says, I'm sorry, but that's not good enough, you have to do it. And so for us, as a library, owning a university-wide unit and everything that comes with it, all the compliance that comes with it, that has been a major disruption. A good, positive disruption.
One of the options that it's being proposed in our main institution is actually unbundling of the library services whereby students can choose to pay for library services. Just wondering if that's something that you're facing as well, and it's a possibility.
No, not that I've heard. Unbundling library services and paying for individual ones, is that what you mean? No, that's probably the day I leave. But no, that we haven't been having those discussions at all. We have been having discussions about how to maximise, return on investment, if you like, of our services, and how we offer those services in the trimmest way that still doesn't not deliver good service to students, but certainly not a pay for yourself model. No.
I think one more question.
Kia ora, Judith. Claire Gabriel from AUT University in Auckland. Judith, in your presentation, you touched upon people for whom disruption brought changes on both sides, both the service providers and service receivers, that wasn't necessarily was welcome.
Yep.
Did you ever go back to any of those people and say, well, okay, we've been through the disruption, what do you think now? And if you did, what were their responses?
That's a good question, thank you. We did. When we first started offering our study solutions service, where we were asking our liaison librarians to sign up, essentially, volunteer to do one-on-one consultations with students. So they had to sit for 25 minutes and help a student write a piece of work or write a paragraph or do some time management. We talked to our liaison librarians about what sorts of things they thought they would need to do in that, and they were kind of resistant, might be a general way of putting it, some of them not. When we went back to them 6 months later to review that service, when we asked them, the response was overwhelmingly positive, because for the liaison librarians, the general feeling, and I'm homogenising the responses, was finally I can help the students do what they're asking me to help them do. And we've had to really upskill and put a lot of time and effort into upskilling and changing people's opinions of what their service role is. We've changed our position descriptions to say this is what you do now. We've changed the way they are promoted to make sure that they can be promoted on that. But we have actually had feedback from those liaison librarians to say, this is a good thing now. I feel like I'm making a difference. And I think the testament of that is that we've not been short of liaison librarians signing up for that study solutions service. They just want to do it. In fact, the next group of staff coming through at our level 5, they want to do it as well. And so we have this huge tail backup of staff who are prepared to work in that service, because what they get back from those students is enough to actually drive them on into that service, because that's where the money for them is. It's about actually seeing that student come in tears and leave with a sense of relief. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you.